Now, it should be obvious to anyone that the methods the Israeli army employed in that conflict, which have been spoken about numerous times by officers from other armies, exceeds that of any other Western country in terms of how they tackle things.
You're just speaking the biggest nonsense on God's earth.
Well,
you haven't
I don't think so.
You're talking about. You're talking about Kemp, Ron Kemp. You quote one person. Have you read the human rights report?
No. It's not just Richard Kemp.
Excuse me, sir, but I take deep offense at what you're saying because people are dead, children are dead, and you're just speaking nonsense. There were three.
Israeli children are dead. Thousands of missiles were shot indiscriminately into civilian populations. No country in the world would tolerate such behavior. I'm sorry, Professor is just focusing exclusively on one side of the story.
Okay, let's.
Excuse me, sir. There were 300 human rights reports written on Operation Cast Lead. How many have you read? I read 300 of them. How many of you read? You just speak because Ron Kemp, that imbecile, that agent for Israel.
Okay, I think we need to. Let's.
No, it's despicable.
Okay.
It's despicable how you carry on with your red tie and your crossed legs when people are being killed.
Now, I've followed Mr. Kemp for many years. He's kind of an official Israeli cheerleader who the Israelis bring out every time they carry out a high-tech killing spree in Gaza. Mr. Kemp is rolled out. I don't know if he's a true believer. Maybe he's one of those Zionist fundamentalists, Christian fundamentalists. Maybe he's being paid by Israel. I don't know. But what I do know is you can never attach any truth value to anything Mr. Kemp has to say. I wrote a book on Gaza, and if you turn to the index, you'll see there are many entries on the limitless lies of Richard Kemp. So let's turn to what he said now. He said he's shocked that I would describe what's going on in Gaza as a genocide. Well, with the exception of 2 of the 17 judges in the International Court of Justice, 15 of the 17 judges, they themselves were persuaded that Israel was plausibly committing a genocide in Gaza. So it's not just this weird, aberrant Professor Finkelstein, it's the top judicial body in the world. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Kemp the following question. He says it's not a genocide that's occurring in Gaza. So here is a perplexity to me. Why is it that proportionately more medics have been killed in Gaza than in any other war zone in the world? Why is it that more journalists have been killed in Gaza than in any other war zone in the world? Why is it that more UN workers have been killed in Gaza than anywhere else, any other war zone in the world? Why is it that yesterday, 45 doctors who served in Gaza this past year, 45 doctors, published a letter in which they said that every day in the hospitals, they had to deal with children who were shot in the head or in the chest. It wasn't shrapnel. It wasn't indiscriminate bombing. It was children who were targeted in the head and the chest. Why is that, Mr. Kemp? Israel's favorite cheerleader with his pom-poms?
Okay.
Why is it, Mr. Kemp?
I'd like to,
why is it, Mr. Kemp?
I think we should let Colonel Kemp respond now.
Allow me just to finish. Why is it, Mr.
Can I add
Kemp?
one question?
Don't all start talking. I want to come. Let Colonel Kemp respond. There's a lot of allegations against him.
Allow me to finish.
Not allowed in.
Allow me to finish.
Okay.
Why is it, Mr. Kemp, that Israeli snipers shot at 2 women in a church convent when all the details of their presence had been sent to Israeli military officials? Why did Israel fire 2 tank shells in the convent complex at a building housing 54 children with disabilities? Does that sound to you like a war,
Okay, well,
Mr. Kemp? Or does it sound to you like a genocide?
Norman, I want to let Colonel Kemp respond. You made a number of allegations against him. Colonel Kemp, your chance to respond.
Can I add?
Rama, I want Rama.
Yeah, I
want Colonel Kemp to be able to respond. So let him respond. Colonel Kemp.
I wouldn't accuse Professor Finkelstein of lying as he accused me of lying, but he's obviously badly mistaken about the decision or the pronouncement of the International Court of Justice, who did not say, no justice on that court said that Israel's plausibly committing a genocide. And that's been clarified by the former president of the ICJ,
that's
who
a
said
flat-out lie.
And it was said that you want to control the airwaves now, Mr. Finkelstein, do you? It was said that that South Africa had a plausible case, was in a plausible position to bring a case of genocide, not that there was a plausible genocide.
That's a flat-out lie.
Dismissed by the International Court of Justice. And the second thing is, all the examples that Mr. Finkelstein gave, he reeled off just now, I can't answer every single one of those allegations, but let's assume they all did happen, as he said. Let's assume that. I don't believe they did, but let's assume it. None of that is genocide. What is genocide?
Video footage.
Is Hamas's
There's
policy.
IDF soldiers on TikTok showcasing their war crimes audaciously.
Charter describes its mission as being genocide against both the Israelis and the Jewish people as a whole. Their actions on the 7th of October confirmed their intent to commit genocide. The words of their leaders repeatedly wanting to do more and more 7th of Octobers reaffirms that policy. It is Hamas that is a genocidal terrorist organization. Israel is a Western liberal democracy defending its own people according to international law. They've taken the greatest possible steps to provide humanitarian aid into Gaza. They've taken the greatest possible steps, greater than any other army in history, to minimize the deaths of innocent civilians, while Hamas have been doing all they can to maximize the death of their own civilians, to bring the kind of international pressure we're seeing from the ICC and the ICJ.
Would it be fair to say, and I'm no lawyer, and many people watching and listening will not be lawyers, but would it be fair to say that the key point that you made your initial order and ruling upon was whether or not there was a plausible case that should be taken on by the court of genocide in the case of Israel's actions in Gaza after October 7, and you quite clearly decided that there was a plausible case? Is it right to say that's at the heart of what you decided?
You know, I'm glad I have a chance to address that, because the court's test for deciding whether to impose measures uses the idea of plausibility, but the test is the plausibility of the rights that are asserted by the applicant, in this case, South Africa. So the court decided that the Palestinians had a plausible right to be protected from genocide, and that South Africa had the right to present that claim in the court. It then looked at the facts as well, but it did not decide, and this is something where I'm correcting what's often said in the media, it didn't decide that the claim of genocide was plausible. It did emphasize in the order that there was a risk of irreparable harm to the Palestinian right to be protected from genocide. But the shorthand that often appears, which is that there's a plausible case of genocide, isn't what the court decided.